Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Rock Solid Live. This is Saturday, the Saturday before Easter, and we are glad that you are watching. Now, the reason we're doing it today instead of Sundays, I know tomorrow's Easter is going to be a busy day for everyone, so we just want to do this today. But next week, we'll get back on our regular schedule, Wednesdays and Sundays at 7 p.m. But tonight, I really wanted just to talk to you about a few things because this is the end of Holy Week. Last Rock Solid Live, we talked about Palm Sunday and how Palm Sunday, the Sunday before Easter, is really the beginning of Holy Week. It's when Jesus came into Jerusalem. And that was such an important thing that we see in the Gospels because we know that Jerusalem is where Jesus would die. And so Jesus coming to Jerusalem was huge because in that week, which we call Holy Week, takes place many different events. Of course, Monday, we see Jesus going into the temple and tearing apart the temple, casting out those who are basically turning the temple into a den of thieves, as Jesus called it. Tuesday, we see Jesus doing many different teachings. And then, of course, Wednesday, we don't see a whole lot happen. Thursday, we see the Lord's Supper. We see Jesus in the garden. We see the arrest late at night. And then, of course, yesterday, which was Friday, is the day that we call Good Friday. And so I do want to read out Isaiah chapter 53 tonight. And Isaiah 53 is probably my favorite chapter in the entire Bible because this is a chapter that the Lord spoke to the prophet Isaiah. And this is a chapter that happened hundreds of years before the life of Jesus Christ. But if you listen to the words, it describes the Messiah, the Son of God, Jesus, in such a beautiful way. So Isaiah chapter 53, it says, "Who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed." Now, what is this talking about? It's talking about what Jesus Christ would go through on the cross. God knew exactly what his son would go through. And the truth is, the only way that we can have that relationship with Jesus, the only way we can be forgiven, the only way that we can be counted as righteous in the eyes of God is because of what Jesus went through. He had to go through this. Now, I'll be honest with you, it took me several years to really wrap my mind around why did a perfect, sinless man like Jesus have to go through everything he went through for me. And it's because he was that perfect man. He was that sinless man. And I am a sinner. I am a sinful creature. And yet Jesus, who was sinless, came and he went through everything. He was afflicted. He was wounded. He was bruised. And he did it for us. So continuing in Isaiah 53, verse 6 says, "And we, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." There is no better description of us than sheep. Because like sheep, as long as we're being led by Jesus, we're doing the right things, we're going the right way. But when the master goes away, what happens? Man, we scatter, we make bad decisions. And Jesus, the good shepherd, died for his sheep. Let's continue. Verse 7, "He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shears is silent. So he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Verse 11, he shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. We are the transgressors. We're the sinners. And Jesus, the righteous servant, came and bore our sin. You know, I remember as a child, the church that my grandma went to, every Good Friday, we had a big celebration. And we had a big church service at 3 o'clock because we believed that 3 p.m. was about the time that Jesus hung on the cross. And we would talk about Jesus bearing our sins and Jesus going to the cross. And I remember as a child being so confused because we would talk about Jesus having to carry this cross and being literally nailed through his hands and feet on this cross. And I remember as a child saying, why would they call this Good Friday? Why would this horrific event be something that we call good? And then I read Isaiah 53 and I read the Gospels. And the truth is, the reason we call it Good Friday, it wasn't good for Jesus, but it was good for us. Because the only way that we can have peace, the only way we can have that relationship like we talked about earlier, is because Jesus went through this. Everything in Isaiah 53, if you read the Gospels, if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus went through it. He took his cross. He was nailed to the cross. And when he was dying, he said, "It is finished." See, today is Saturday. It's between Good Friday and Easter. And just for a moment, I want you to think about what happened on this day. Jesus died. Tomorrow we celebrate the empty tomb. But can you imagine Saturday? Mary, the mother of Jesus, was there as her son was on that cross. The disciples were scattered. Only John the Beloved was there. The rest of them were hiding. Peter betrayed his master Jesus. And on this day, this Saturday, Jesus' body is in a tomb. They have a huge stone in front of it. They have guards posted. There is no hope. Everyone thinks, man, Jesus was a great teacher. He's a great prophet. But he is dead. There is no one believing something great's going to happen. But the reason we celebrate Easter is because Jesus did not stay in that tomb. The reason that we can have that celebration is because on that third day, that tomb became empty. Now listen, I know this is a different Easter for a lot of people. I know usually Easter is a day where we come to church and we have a big celebration. It's one of the busiest days in the church. And this year we will not have that. But that does not mean that the story of Easter is any different. Because what Jesus did on the cross still applies to us in 2020. It is no different. And so I hope that you understand that what Jesus went through, what we read in Isaiah 53, man, I hope you understand that it applies to you, each and every one of you. Now, tomorrow, here in the Calico Rock area, we will have opportunities to still worship. We, of course, are going to have our broadcast here at First Baptist Church at 2 p.m. Brother Kevin will preach. We're also still planning our 6:30 community service at River Rock Church right by Harps. Their pastor John Foreman will preach. And then at 11 a.m., First Baptist Church and Dolph Baptist are still going to be at the high school at Calico Rock. And Brother Logan Holiday is going to preach. We're going to sit in our cars and we're going to listen through the radio. And so we're still going to have opportunities to worship. Yes, it'll be in different ways. No, it won't be all together in the church building. But guess what? That's not the biggest part of Easter celebration. The biggest part of Easter is understanding what Jesus Christ did. You have to understand why we call it Good Friday. You have to understand why Jesus dying on that cross was so important. It's important to understand what Jesus meant when he said, "It is finished." What that means is that him coming, him bearing his soul, just like we read about, it was finished. He gave everything. He gave his lifeblood for us. But if he just died and that was the end of the story, then he's no different than any other martyr. He's no different than any other religious person. The thing that makes Jesus different is because he did not stay dead. And that's why we celebrate Easter. And so tomorrow, I hope that you do truly celebrate Easter. And I hope in your own life you have been, as we say in church, washed by the blood. And you understand that your life is different. Not because you're a church member, not because your grandma or your mom or your dad's a church member, but because you understand that Jesus Christ died on that cross. And when that tomb was empty, it means that the Son of God could not be held by death. And that's the reason we celebrate Easter. And so, just one more time, remember to go to YouTube. Remember to search for First Baptist Church Calico Rock, and you'll see all these videos, Rock Solid Live. You'll also see the church videos that Brother Kevin Bishop and I do. Tomorrow, we'll do another one at 2 p.m. I hope that you'll join in and watch it. Sister Evelyn Bishop will be singing a special. We'll have a lot of great things planned. And remember, this Wednesday and next Sunday, we'll get back to the normal Rock Solid Live. So we'll see you this upcoming Wednesday at 7 p.m. And listen, I hope everything's going good. We're definitely praying for you here at First Baptist Church. And we're hoping that you are staying encouraged in your life. Have a great evening.